There you go. It looks like we're live, Mark. And just
We're
like
live.
that, we're being broadcast to the world. To those of you who are joining us today, thank you for tuning in to the latest in Influitive series called the Content Marketing Mentor Series. My name is Jim Williams. I'm the Vice President of Marketing here. And today, I'm joined on the latest one of these series, our fourth in the series, by Mark Schaefer. Mark, thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me. Honored to be here.
Excellent. And we're going to get into it in short order here, but let me set it up a little bit for the audience. The series, which you call, again, the Content Marketing Mentor Series, is really diving into not just content marketing in general, but specifically, we've been talking a lot about what's changing in the world of content marketing and diving into user-generated content, which is a trend that seems to be all the rage. A lot of people are talking about, and certainly many of our customers of Influitive are finding out new ways to get user-generated content to inspire their customers to create content for them, with them, etc. So we'll be diving into that. This conversation will last about 30 minutes. These things have been quick. We've done several of them, as I've said. This is number 4. We talked to Andy Cristodina, Jay Acunzo I talked to. We had Ardith Albi on last week. And so, Mark, latest in a series of content marketing mentors.
You saved the best for last.
Save the best for last, that's right. So I am going to give you a quick intro, Mark, but probably will not do enough justice, so you can add on here. But for those of you who are not familiar with Mark Schaefer, he's probably best known for coining the term content shock in January 2014. I know we've referenced content shock frequently in our marketing, and it seems like a lot of people that talk about the concept of content shock. You're an adjunct professor at Rutgers University. We were just talking about that. Very interesting. Author of 5 books, which you can see behind you there, Mark, on the bookshelf, actually displaying it. Kind of out of those, best known, the most recent one is the Content Code, very popular one. Sounds like you're working on a new book that we can dive into. And then on top of that, again, you're a content marketing mentor and master, so you speak at all types of places like South by Southwest, Wilma, Oxford, and do a lot of consulting with some well-known brands like Adidas, Cisco, and Microsoft. Mm-hmm. So what did I miss, Mark? Tell me a little bit about how you got to where you are. Give us the Mark introduction from you.
Well, I think that's the good short introduction. I mean, I think basically I'm a teacher in everything that I do. I love to blog and speak, and you mentioned I teach at the university, but I really see that everything I do is just an opportunity to give back and teach. I've had a great career, great education, lots of amazing experiences, and so it's, you know, I enjoy this point in my life. So I kind of see myself, bottom line is I'm a teacher.
Very good. Did you always know you were going to be a teacher, especially around the idea of marketing and content, or no?
Well, I kind of did. You know, when I was a young man, starting out in my career, I kind of had this vision. I love marketing, and I thought, well, I'll spend 10 years at a B2B, 10 years at a B2C, 10 years at an agency, and then I'll teach. And it didn't really work out that way because I was with a big B2B company, and every time I got ready to leave, they sweetened the pot and gave me a promotion, and so then they got their talons into me, and I have no regrets at all. Really don't have any regrets at all. But I always thought that maybe I would teach someday, and I can remember when my daughter was real little, I was helping her with her homework, and she said, "Daddy, you should be a teacher someday. You explain things so well. I'm so confused in school, but then when you explain it, I understand it." So, so I think I've always kind of known I would be a teacher at some point.
So your 10-10-10 plan turned into kind of a 20-year B2B plan, and then
30 and something else.
Well, look, you got to teacher not only through the books, obviously, that you've authored and speaking on stage, but you are legitimately a professor. Tell us a little bit about that. What are you teaching today? Where are you teaching?
Well, I teach at Rutgers. I teach at Rutgers University. I've also taught a little bit at Notre Dame.
Hmm.
Uh, and I do guest lectures all around the world. And really my specialty is digital marketing, social media, content. Those are the topics that I'm most passionate about. And I do workshops. I do corporate workshops all over the world, kind of leveraging some of that battle-tested content. I try everything out in the classes. And if it goes over okay, then I take it out into the real world. So there's an amazing symbiotic relationship between teaching and consulting and creating content. So, I mean, I'll get questions in my class, and these are like, top level marketing people. This is a graduate level class. These are, experienced marketing leaders from big companies, and they'll ask me questions. I'll say, oh, wait a minute, that's going to be a blog post. And, and then it also, sometimes the people in the class, that leads to consulting assignments. So there's kind of like this symbiotic relationship. It all works together really well.
Is that the genesis of the book that you're working on now? You mentioned that to me. Is a lot of this driven by actual questions you're getting?
Yeah, it is. It is actually. I have this cool little thing on my website where people can sign up for an hour of my time for a little bit of money. And the reason I did it was because people kept saying, they want to pick your brain. They want, free advice. And if it's somebody I know or somebody that's in transition or a student, I mean, I never say no, but I got so many of these requests, and I'm a nice guy and I don't want to say no. So I said, oh, well, you can go to this place on my site, sign up for an hour of my time for $200. Well, 90% of the people go away, but I don't have to say no. So I'm still a nice guy. But 10% of the people sign up. So, maybe 4 or 5 times a month, I'll just spend an hour talking to people from all around the world with the most amazing business problems. And I kept hearing this theme. I kept giving the same answer over and over and over again. People say, well, I'd like to write a book someday. I want to be in a position to be considered a thought leader in my industry so I can get a better job. I want to be invited to lecture at a university. I want to be on a board. I want to start a speaking career. And I kept saying, well, you need to be known. And so I started thinking about, is there a process that people could follow in any industry, in any walk of life, to become known? And really, the conversation started about 3 years ago when I was working on the Content Code book. And I got into a conversation with a friend, and we actually talked about, can anybody become known? He said, I don't know. He said, I just don't know. It seems like you kind of have to have this special it factor. And so I've just been obsessed with this idea for the last 3 years, been studying it, researching it. I've interviewed more than 70 different people from every kind of walk of life you can imagine who are known in their field, not necessarily famous, but known.
Yeah.
And I found that there is a path. There is a process you can follow. And so that's what I've been writing a book. It's how do you become, the book is called Known.
Yep.
And it's the handbook to unleash your personal brand in the digital age. That's so great. It's different than, find your passion. If you can be it, if you can see it and dream it, you can be it. It's different than that. This is actually data-based. Let's have a plan and figure this out. So I think it's going to help a lot of people.
That's good. It's inspiring. So not only is the answer yes, you can be known, but there's a formula.
There is, absolutely. There's a path that everybody can follow. Yeah.
What's the definition of known then? Like, how do you know when you cross that threshold from unknown to known?
It's different for everybody because it depends on what your goals are. And it could be you want to be on a stage in front of 3,000 people. One example in a book is a medical doctor who wanted to be known in her community because there was this bad information going around and children weren't getting inoculated. Yeah. So she started a blog, and she needed to build an audience because she wanted to make an impact. She wanted to change the lives of children in her community. So the definition, I mean, success is a very personal thing. It's a very personal idea. If your goal is, I want to be known so that I can speak at social media marketing world, you've got an audience of 2. There are 2 people that make that decision.
Right.
If you want to monetize your reputation in some way, then your audience might be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. So the definition of success is very personal.
Right. Right. Subjective. Very interesting. And when is that? When was that?
It'll be out. It'll be out before March 1st, late February, early March, I think.
Very good. Very good. Well, congratulations. We look forward to that.
Thank you.
Let me ask you about another piece. So, like, again, I kind of introduced this at the very beginning, but we certainly talk a lot about the concept of content shock, and I think you introduced that term, that idea, in 2014, right? Amazingly enough, it's like
2 years.
2 years ago, right?
2 years ago.
For a brief recap or an introduction to the audience, what does content shock mean, and what are its implications?
Well, it's a very simple term, and it ended up driving a little bit of controversy. It's not so controversial anymore, I don't think, because I think people look around and say, yeah, he was right. But I was having this uneasy feeling that marketing was just getting more and more difficult. It was more difficult to get readers. It was more difficult to get engagement. Everything was becoming more difficult. So I studied this and researched this, and I saw this wall of content coming at us, and people are projecting that between now and 2020, the amount of information on the web is going to increase by 500%. And some people think that's conservative.
Yep.
So if you think how enormous the web is, we're going to have 5 of those in the next 5 years. Do you think it's going to be a little harder to be in marketing? So I kind of kicked off this idea that it's just simple economics. When there's too much stuff in any human, natural, or economic system, there's got to be a change. There's got to be a shift. So you can predict as this amount of content goes up, but the precious resource is the amount of attention for that content.
Right.
It's going to change the economics of content. It's going to change the dynamics. So you just think this through and you think, well, there's more for a finite number of awareness. Well, it's going to become more difficult to compete. It's going to become more expensive to compete. And remember, I wrote this at a time when this was before Facebook. It became so obvious that it was pay to play, and you've got to pay today. And so it also says, well, it's going to be more expensive because you're going to have to promote it, or you're going to have to create content so incredibly amazing compared to what you're doing today. But there's a cost associated with that. Mm-hmm. So the cost of marketing is going to go up. The cost of content marketing is going to go up. And we've seen that. And there's research and data everywhere to show that. So it's just a simple idea that it's going to become more difficult. It's going to become more expensive. And some businesses may not be able to compete. It may not be a viable strategy. And a simple analogy would be, in the early days of television, there wasn't much content, and there weren't many advertisers. So the programs in the early days, the content in the early days of television were like local singers and people doing cooking shows, that lived down the street from you. And the advertisers were, Joe's gas station and Margie's bakery. And then television became more popular, and the amount of content became, better. The amount of advertising that was available became more scarce. Mm-hmm. So to compete on television, you have to have better content. You got to pay to play because the channel matured. That's what's happening with content marketing too. So it's very predictable. It's very predictable to kind of dream. But back then in 2014, this was a radical idea.
So what's happened in the 3 years? You say like it's pretty much borne out your prediction around content shock and the cost to compete. Have you seen kind of a class of haves and have-nots emerge in the kind of in the content marketing world? Like, have there been some companies that have figured out how to do it cost effectively? And if so, what things are they doing that, make them better than their competitors?
Well, the interesting thing is that the goal of content marketing is really to create content shock for your competitors.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what you need to do, content shock affects different companies unevenly because the information density in different market verticals is different. So here's an example. This young guy came to me and he said, I want to be known for baby moons. I said, what's a baby moon? He said, well, it's this trend right now where you go on a vacation like a honeymoon. It's romantic, but it's right before you have a baby. So if you Google the term,
What's a trend?
it's a trend. So if you Google the term baby moon, there's not much out there right now. So the information dense, there is no content shock.
Right.
The information density is low. He has an opportunity to create great content consistently, dominate that niche, get all the Google juice flowing that way. And so now it's very difficult for his competitors to compete with him because he's got this big head start with Google, right? So he's created content shock. It's going to be more expensive and more difficult for those competitors to compete because he did a good job finding an unsaturated niche and dominating it. So it's uneven, really. In some markets, it's very, very crowded. We see a lot of evidence. So, for example, Buffer did an amazing blog post that showed how engagement was going down, and they were creating more content and better content, but their numbers just kept going down. And their conclusion was, Schaefer's right. There's just too much competition today. BuzzSumo did an article analyzing the engagement levels on some of the biggest sites in the industry, like Social Media Examiner and Moz and a few others, and they showed the same trend. Mm-hmm. The engagement is going down. The shares are going down. The amount of content is going up. The quality is at least as good or better, but everything's going down. And you look at organic reach on Facebook. When I wrote that blog post, the average organic reach on Facebook was 36%. Today, it's less than 1% without a boost. And Facebook itself explained it. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal explaining this, and they said, there's too much stuff. The average customer on Facebook can see an average of 1,500 stories a day. So they cut it and cut it and cut it and cut it and cut it into some reasonable fashion. And the first people that are going to cut are me and you, the businesses.
All right. So you're painting a pretty bleak picture, not to just marketers like myself, but you also teach to people who want to go into marketing per se. So like, what is a marketer to do if they want to get high levels of engagement and they are dealing in the world of content shark and they have limited financial resources? What's a marketer to do?
All you need is $14.99. That's how much the content code book is.
Here you go.
Because that's exactly the question I had to solve, Jim, because I'm a marketing strategist, and I'm sitting back and I'm watching all this happen. And so I had to come up with a solution, and I was just obsessed about this. Not even in a healthy way, but I had to figure this out. And what I determined is that the marketing conversation today has been about content, creating content, more content, optimize content, epic content, and build your audience. But the economic value of content is zero unless it's seen and shared. Right. So this suggests a third competency that we need to have in our marketing departments. Everything starts with great content, but that's not the finish line. That's the starting line. We need to engage. We need to build our audience. But to really drive economic value from social media and from content, it comes through transmission. We have to understand how do we get that content to be seen? How do we get it to move? And there's huge economic benefits that come through transmission. There was an amazing study done by the New York Times. It's probably the greatest content marketing research study ever done. They showed that 85% of the adults in this study said, I understand the company, the product, the services better. These are people that say they shared the content. Why? Because they read it. Because for people to share content, it's a big deal. It's a very intimate decision. I'm putting this out in the world. This expresses me. And they're becoming advocates. They're saying, I believe in this. When they share it, they're saying, in a virtual way, I believe in this, and I want you to believe in this too. This inspired me, and I want to inspire you too. So the act of sharing content is a very big deal, and that's where we have been remiss or behind in our companies. You've seen the same research I have. 70 to 80% of the content at B2B companies is never seen.
Right. Complete
waste of money. And they're looking around saying, oh, what do we do? What do we do? We'll invest more in SEO. That doesn't do it. You can trick people into clicking a link, but you can't trick them into reading it or sharing it. So that's what the content code book is about. It's the 6 strategies companies can use to get the content to move,
right?
To get the content to be shared, because that drives the economics of the web.
Got it. So shareable, getting people to share. And you mentioned the word, which of course the bell probably rang in here when you said the word advocates, right? This is obviously we're in the world of advocate marketing and influence.
Right.
It's a business we're in.
I got a whole chapter about that in the book. It's incredibly important today.
Yeah, well, all of the research we're seeing suggests that the most popular content is content that is either shared by a customer or even better, created by a customer on your behalf. And so we've been talking a lot about this idea of user-generated content. And it seems to be extremely popular, dare I say almost mainstream in the consumer world. You look at companies like Pepsi and Starbucks that do this, or GoPro, their entire marketing is based on user-generated content.
Right.
And on and on and on. But then you look at B2B and it's, you get case studies. There's kind of marketers get their hand on a customer story and turn it into something that's crass. Is there a reason why you think B2B marketers haven't really figured out the user-generated content thing?
Well, I mean, you have to think about it. I mean, it depends on the industry and it depends on the type of company. But I mean, let's say I'm buying something from you, and you're my customer, and I would love for you to create some sort of content that validates our relationship. Number one, you may be prohibited from doing that by your company. All right. Number two, strategically, you may not want to tip off my competitors. You may not want to do that. Right. So it is a little bit different in the B2B space, but there are a lot of good case studies out there where you still can use content. You can still use digital platforms to build those long-term relationships that turn into advocacy. So I think there is a different strategy in B2B compared to B2C. Perhaps it's a little more subtle, a little more refined, but I was talking to a B2B tech company out in California. They're doing amazing things. So, I mean, when people share their content, they reward them. They bring them into special events. They give them previews of new products. Right. The people that share content the most, they want to be seen as being the experts. They're on top of everything. So if you can give them a little bit of research, if you can give them a little bit of preview into something, that's going to make your content move.
Right. So at the end of the day, what you're saying here is, while there are tips you can do around the content itself and its format and how shareable it is, at the end of the day, if you really want other people sharing content or creating content for you, it's about the kind of relationship that you're trying to build with them.
Yes. I mean,
Perhaps not as transactional, I think.
I mean, I believe in that. And, you know, I kind of sit on the fence in both directions, where I'm very, very interested in influence marketing. I wrote the first book on influence marketing, and I've been really passionate about this idea for many years. But I'm also considered an influencer by many companies. Maybe that's why you have me on this broadcast today, because somehow I'm important to you and your customers. And when I work, I get pitched 12, 15 times a day. I don't even open up the emails. But there was a B2B company, a software company, that's, you know, they saw I was going to be speaking at an event, and they said, "Hey, Mark, you know, we're going to have a little dinner. We're going to bring some people together. No sales pitch, no thing. We just want to get to know you and have a nice dinner together." And it was free food. I liked that. And I liked some of the people that were going to be there. It was an opportunity to see some friends. So I said, okay, true to their word, no pitch, no sales, but I got to meet the people and I liked them. And now here's what that gets them. I open their emails.
Right.
The relationship is beginning because they treat me like a person, not, you know, pitching me on something to try to use me for a day.
Maybe there's a face behind those emails, or a story behind those emails, or a conversation, or an insight.
Yeah. And so if someone knows me and befriends me and tries to understand me, and we're in a position where we'll help each other, I mean, there's nothing I won't do to help people at different companies. But if they just try to pitch me, it just doesn't work. So, I mean, they need to listen to people like you at Influitive to find out how to.
Why do you think it's so hard? Like the formula you just described seems pretty straightforward. Now, again, you're an influencer per se, but you can think of a customer. Every customer has the ability to influence others. In fact, probably more profoundly than your best marketer or salesperson, right?
Absolutely.
But why do they botch the relationship thing, right? The notion of intimacy, of human relationships.
You know, I can't really fully explain it other than to say, in general, people treat people differently online versus offline.
Right.
We say things we wouldn't say. We do things we wouldn't do. You can see it all over the place. And I mean, one of the things I try to emphasize is at the end of every one of my talks, every one of my lectures, I talk about the killer app is to be more human, is to use that as a filter in everything you do, every interaction, every piece of content, every connection you make. How can we show up? How can we care? How can we show compassion? How can we treat them like a real person? And the marketing world, everything is going against that. We have pop-up ads. I mean, it's been so destructive. All these annoying ads and all these things. And you know, okay, you want this piece of content? Well, sign up for this thing first. It's like if someone comes to your store, which you said, no, you can't come in the store. No, you got to give us your email address first. You don't do that. You just don't do that in the real world. And so we have this huge psychology, this huge condition that we treat people differently. We don't have the same conversations. We don't have the same courtesy. We don't have the same respect. We don't have the same humanity. But if you want me to love you, respect you, be an advocate for you, we've got to be people, person to person, P to P.
Yeah, it's really good insights. It's true. I mean, we talk about this a lot, and there really is something to this kind of rise. We call it the rise of the machine, right? Like, you've got access to so much digital capabilities now, so many ways to reach people, to scale up the volume of your message, that you're suddenly losing sight of what it is you're trying to accomplish, right? Like,
right.
it's part of the thing that I think afflicts B2B marketing. Look, I said it would be a half hour, and I think we got some great insights there. We're right on the nose at 2:30, and I don't want to keep you longer than that. Mark, it's been a really, really interesting conversation. I appreciate your insights on content shock, advocacy, and everything else. Again, Mark Schaefer, he is coming out with your book called Known, which will be out before the end of February, correct?
That's the goal. That's the goal. That's the hope.
And if you want to get known,
yeah,
pick up this book and figure there's a formula there for getting known. Sounds very interesting. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you again for taking so much time with us today. Thank you to the audience for tuning in, and we'll be back for the next of our Content Marketing Mentor Series in just a bit. Mark, have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.